My guest today is the co-host of the Keiser Report and Orange Pill podcast, Stacy Herbert. Welcome to Stansberry Research.
Nice to be here. I'm loving your work you're doing there. Loads of great interviews.
I appreciate that very much coming from you. As you know, I'm a huge fan. And I should have added to the intro about you. I love how your brain thinks. I love following you on Twitter because you always make me stop and think. And that's why I want to cover a lot of ground with you today. I also want to add that you were an early investor and adopter of Bitcoin, an avid fan and promoter of silver. And we're going to talk about that. But first, of course, the election. I just had Gerald Celente on the show saying we are now living officially in a banana republic 2.0. How do you see it, Stacy?
So I agree with that we are seeing a breakdown in the elite messaging system, as Matt Taibbi called it. And that is because we have these two networks, essentially, Democratic network and Republican network, that have so propagandized the population, but also themselves, that they don't even understand the reality around them. So they don't understand a full half of the population. They don't understand what they are and who they are and what they want. So we keep seeing this elite failure, right? We saw it in 2016, we saw it with Brexit, and we saw it with 2020. They get all the polls wrong. They predict the outcome completely wrong, and they keep on doing that over and over and over again because, well, as you mentioned with Twitter, they stay more inside their blue check bubble, right? They don't hear even online. Like, the internet is supposed to be a place to go find information, and somehow they've managed to put themselves in tiny bubbles within this vast globalized network where they don't even hear any opinion outside it. And in fact, are fighting to get people deplatformed.
Right, because right. Sorry, continue.
Yeah,
Right. Because people tend to search for news that matches their agenda.
Yeah, and you're seeing that obviously today with the breakdown in people willing to accept results. Nobody accepted the results in 2016. That's why we had 4 years of investigations and the Mueller report and Russiagate and all these sort of things. And I'm sure we're going to see that for the next 4 years, whoever ultimately, it takes the White House. And part of this is also tied to price propaganda. So America, in much of the Western world, we have so much price propaganda, and it's driven by who Barron's declared the winner of the US election, which is the Fed and all the other central banks around the world, just printing money and creating a quintillionaire class who don't have to, they're never held responsible for all their bad decisions, because not only does the Fed bail them out, but then the same, as I was saying, with the propaganda, the political propaganda, they get bailed out of all their bad decisions all the time, because there's always somebody there slapping them on the back saying, you did a great job. Yes, the Iraq war is a disaster, but you're a good, well-meaning person here. Okay, your credit derivatives blew up the global economy in 2008, but we have to look forward, not back. You did a good job. You tried your best. There's never any sort of reckoning for them in our system, because we have so much propaganda, price propaganda, and political propaganda.
And so, and I know Max and you have spoken about this, how Jerome Powell is the real winner here. Who has the most to lose? Is it the middle class, Stacy?
Well, I think the elite ultimately have the most to lose, because their system is disintegrating and collapsing, and I just don't know if they'll be able to survive without it. Ordinary people, I think, are fine. Max and I came back to the United States from Europe, where we had been living for 20 years after the 2016 election. And because of the results of the election, because of the failure of the pollsters and the elite media to predict that outcome, also to fail to predict the outcome of Brexit, we decided to travel across the US twice. And we did 2 documentary series just talking to ordinary people. And ordinary people out there are not on Twitter all day. Twitter is high hysterics, and that's where the elite hang out, and they live in a fake reality. They live literally in fake news. Their world that they live in is fake news. The rest of the United States is not hysterical. They're not crazy. They're not, wanting the destruction of half the population, longing for civil war, as we saw on the cable news. So I think, that's why we started our podcast, Orange Pill Podcast. We consider it a moment of like Renaissance 2.0 right now. The first Renaissance happened in Florence, and I know you know Italy very well. At the end of the Dark Ages, during a bubonic plague, inquisitions, like you'd think really horrible times. Half the population of Florence had died in the bubonic plague. You'd think like it's not a great time to like have this like amazing art movement and world
Right.
discovery and things like that. But I think like once these fiat dark ages end, and that's what we're witnessing right now, this is what you're seeing on the cable news, this is what you're seeing in the hysterics on Twitter. Once that dies, like there's a great opportunity for the ordinary
Interesting.
person to build something new.
So let's talk money now, Stacy. I mentioned you were an early adopter of Bitcoin. You love silver. How are you protecting yourself? Are you buying more Bitcoin on? Are you buying more silver?
I dollar cost average all the time into both of them for the last over 10 years now. So I just do it all the time. Silver prepared me for Bitcoin, okay, because it's
Well
not
said.
exactly like a calm sort of investment. It is pretty wild.
And that's why you love it, because you could have, I mean, I know you like gold, but when I first started in precious metals, one of the first people I looked to was you when I was educating myself on silver. So I associate silver with Stacy Herbert. So why,
Well,
what,
it's
you love
not for the
silver,
faint-hearted.
right?
I could say that. That is definitely you have to have, I what are the correct phrases that I could say on television? Like you have to have a very firm grip
Right,
on
right.
yourself. And I think in terms of prices and price action that happened on the election night, I think one of the most important things you saw was when it looked like Trump was going to repeat 2016 and all the betting markets said, oh, he has a 90% chance of winning now. The fastest, most dramatic response in the markets was the Chinese currency yuan. So that crashed, the dollar soared. And then within an hour, it flipped around to Biden, crashing dollar, soaring yuan. So I think that was the number one thing on investors' minds globally of what they were looking for. And in terms of this peaceful transition, where I was saying that Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution, well, I think Biden definitely was a more peaceful option for what the Thucydides trap, because China is taking over. Okay, they're now on 6G. America can't even make 5G yet. So like if the rising power, that Thucydides trap, usually in the past 16 times that it's happened where rising power takes over of a declining power, it usually ends in conflict 12 out of 16 times. This time it might not, if Biden's in there and he was instrumental in helping China become a superpower with elevating them to the WTO, getting to pretend to be developing nations. Still they get to put tariffs on all other nations and stuff like that. So I think he's not going to fight that. And he still bizarrely thinks that China's not any competition to the US. But whatever, that will mean it's going to be a little bit more peaceful transition, rather than, Trump had taken a more Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Right.
Let's go
Well,
down shooting.
'cause I asked you how you were protecting yourself, because I had watched an interview with you, between you and Max, where you were noting how should Biden win, that we could see a repeat of 2008.
Um, I think it's hard to tell because look, obviously the Fed prints a lot more and a lot more aggressively than they did then, and they're willing to take a whole bunch more of bad debt. I think, for example, Biden, what he'll do in the first 100 days, which he's promised, which he can do, which he doesn't need the Senate or Congress to help, is to just delete 1.7 trillion of student debt. That's going to be a massive fiscal stimulus, right? So,
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
tools for him to print on top of what the Fed is going to do. We're going to have more quintillionaires, but we're going to have more uh, fiscal stimulus for the population, even if they can't get it through Senate. They'll do a debt forgiveness on this student debt.
It's definitely interesting times we're living in, Stacy. Something the audience might not know is we have a shared fear of turbulence. Yes, we know turbulence does not bring down planes, so no need for those comments, but we hate turbulence. Have you at least breathed a sigh of relief that you're flying and traveling less, or do you miss it? Does a part of you miss it?
I I told you I'm a silver investor and a Bitcoin investor. I hate crashes, but I keep on going back for more. And
Right.
then every time it crashes, I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, buy, 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 buy. Why am I doing this? It's just gonna like so I kind of like the
Miss it.
thrill and the scare and like, it's the relief afterward, right? Once you're like,
I
whoa, I didn't go down, I didn't
yeah,
die.
you know what? I have to agree with you. Stacy, always fun catching up with you. I guess my last question is silver going $100. That's what our
I am
silver
still
investors want to
counting
hear.
on that. I am still counting on that. I really think, I mean, obviously we had a huge crash when the coronavirus vaccine was announced, but everybody was screaming how it's crashing. I was like, it's like still 20, almost
Right,
$24. I was
right,
like,
right. Well, I guess a lot of people were, I guess some silver investors banking on a Biden were thinking, Green New Deal, solar energy, solar power. But if we have if we still have a Republican Senate, can you really pass this through? Would it really move that silver price?
yeah, but that's the thing is it's not going to matter. China's what's matter. China's producing more steel than ever. A friend of ours who we have on our Keiser Report often, Dan Collins, he
Mhm.
said that China's going to be producing 1 billion tons of steel this year versus 55 million in America. So, I mean, there's a America's not a very big part of the global economy in terms of like commodities, the whole commodity space.
Say what? Right. Which a lot of people don't think beyond that. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Stacy. Uh, Thank you for your thoughts. Come back more often and say hi to Max for us.
Invite me back and I'll be
A-
here.
Absolutely. And thank you for watching. We'll have much more for you. So stay tuned to Stansberry Research.